And we're live. Hey everybody, it's springtime here. I'm here with Isabel. So Isabel, I say this about most people because it's true. I love everybody. But Isabel is one of my absolute favorite humans on this planet. And it's so true. So let me give you guys a little bit of backstory. So probably about 4, maybe 5 years ago. How long has it been?
Oh my gosh, it might be 5 or 6. We've known each other a minute now.
Yeah. So Isabel, I met Isabel in one of my mastermind groups, and we were actually just talking. It was our first exposure to either of us doing like a high level coaching. We signed up. Brett Tanner is both of our mutual coach, and
he's amazing.
He is amazing. I don't know if he's taking private clients. You guys should look him up if he is. But Isabel and I went to this mastermind, and what I loved about Isabel, and she'll tell you her story, is we're in this room and it's a lot of egos and it's a lot of, and trust me, I have one too. So we're all egos. And it's a lot of like numbers and what we're doing. And Isabel gets up there and she tells us what she's doing. And I'm like, had this aha moment. I'm like, holy cow, Isabel makes more money than any person in this room, guaranteed net. You net more money than anybody in that room. And you are living a life by design, working 3 days a week, having kids, all that stuff. And so I just thought today would be a good message. You're speaking at my Mexico event about this and how you can create net worth, because you're crushing it. You're doing so well in all the spaces. And I just think that the world needs to know who you are. So
thank you. That's incredibly sweet.
Yes. So thank you for being here. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what market you're in, kids, family, all that jazz.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live and work in Northern Arizona. So we have a retail team and a wholesale team. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the wholesale team because I think almost everybody knows what a retail team is and what they do. So a retail team, from my perspective, is exactly what you think about when you think about just a real estate team, helping buyers buy, helping sellers sell. But what's sort of different about us is we also have this wholesale element. So a wholesale group or wholesale team, what they do that's a little bit different than a retail team is they find properties off market and they look to sell those to investors. So just like a listing agent is looking for the very best deal for their seller, a wholesale group is looking for the very best deal that they can possibly find on investments. So yeah, so that's sort of the structure of the team. Like I said, we have both. I love both. I'm really passionate about owning a retail team. I love that. I'm also incredibly passionate about owning a wholesale company. I love investing. It's something that I've grown more and more each year. And I've found that for people in real estate, probably the single most impactful thing that you could ever do is, as those good deals are coming across your desk, maybe looking at some of them and going, hey, this could potentially be a deal for me. This could potentially be something to grow my portfolio. So one thing that I did really consistently throughout my career is I really strove to find the very best deal for investors, which I think is amazing. But where I was missing out was I wasn't looking at those same opportunities for me. And I think every agent, especially right now, needs to be putting conscious thought into, hey, if I'm coming across an epic deal, which you probably will at least once a year, like, are you considering buying that? Are you considering putting that in your own portfolio? So we strive so much to create unbelievable value for other people. Why are we not putting the same amount of thought into creating unbelievable value for our family, for our legacy, for our personal wealth? And I think that's the piece that a lot of agents are missing. I think putting at least equal amount of thought into how can I create an epic life and a legacy for my family, it's just as important as how can I serve investors.
Okay, so I want to stop you for a second because I want to dive into this wholesale, but you just said something that I think is so powerful about you. So you have been in real estate for how long?
So, gosh, my son's 7, so 8 years, meaning almost a decade now.
Okay, So 8 years. And what I loved about you is you made the decision, like you do have a big retail business, right? As much as you got into wholesale. We're going to dive into this wholesale because I think this is the missing component for a lot of agents. And so I do want to hear really how you started it and how you are creating, because I think a lot of us get in our main mind, like that's not possible. But your retail business, when did you start a team?
So I started the team probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I was running the team reasonably successfully, and started coaching with Brett. And at that time, he said, look, you should think about adding a retail component to your team. And I sort of laughed at him. I was like, that's not really my thing, Brett.
Yeah.
My thing
you mean a wholesale component to
a
your team,
wholesale
yeah.
team. I was like, my thing is getting sellers the most money. Like that's my thing. And that year he made more money wholesaling than he did on his retail team. And just as a point, like he has an epic team.
Yeah.
So for me, I just thought, oh my gosh, he was right. I've made an incredible mistake. So I thought, all right, I've got to get into this. And I started wholesaling and I tied a property up. I sold it to an investor friend of mine within 24 hours. I had made something like $5,000. It was the easiest thing I had ever done, the easiest transaction I'd ever done in real estate. And I was addicted. If something works, I'm all about you double, triple, quadruple down on it, right?
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I just started building this wholesale component. And I've been doing it ever since. I love it. Once you get the dynamics of it, it's not that hard. I think sometimes people are daunted by doing the same business in a different way. But when you start to realize like, hey, it really is the same business, it's just looking at it through new eyes. You go, I could do this. It's the same thing. It's lead generation. It's, selling contracts.
I think too. So Brett had the same conversation with me. Actually, I remember exactly where we were. We're at like a cocktail party, and at like after a mastermind, and I had actually gone to him, and I'm like, I think I'm going to start selling houses again at a high level. And he just laughed, and then he came over. He's like, Spring, I think there's a better way for you to do this, because I was at that point where my team wasn't making like I could have sold more real estate on my own and netted more. And he's like, hey, there's ways to do this. And so we started working on that. So I think we all get in that brain space of like, there's only one way to do this business. And that's what I've loved about you is so take a step back on your retail, and then we're going to all wholesale and investments. Okay, this is what I really want to hit on. But you also on your retail business were like, hey, I don't need to be some mega team. Like when you talk about a team, you had an assistant. And that's what I loved about you is you hired a director of operations for your home. And what you, in that mastermind, you hit on, you're like, hey, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I want to be present. I'm going to leverage out absolutely everything that doesn't serve me. So maybe hit on that for 1 second, because I feel like this is something everybody needs to hear of. You don't have to have some huge mega organization of people to make the money you want to make if you're purposeful around it. So maybe hit on what you did and that leverage component. And then I really want to dive into like how you ultimately ended up scaling the whole side out, because I think that's powerful.
Yeah, 100%. So I think there are two aspects to this. I think you look, you can have whatever life you want, both personally and professionally. So let's talk a little bit about professionally and sort of what that looks like first. And then we'll talk a little bit personally, because what I do is slightly different than other people. So professionally, we have a team of who I think are just the neatest people I really enjoy being around. We have 7 agents. We have a director of operations who runs our team. And then we have a project manager who runs wholesale. So if you look at it compared to, say, maybe your organization, we're much, much leaner. So small but mighty, right? And the major factor there that I really try to focus on is just profitability. So how can we run a business that's lean and mean and super profitable? So the spoiler alert to that is one of the ways to make your businesses incredibly profitable but maybe do it in a leaner way, is to run multiple business lines out of the same staff. So our same administrative team runs the retail side, runs the wholesale side, and also helps me with my investing business. So in doing that, my wholesale business and my investing business are almost straight profit because all the expenses are borne on the retail side. So if you're sort of looking at how can I monetize what it is that I've already built in a bigger way, an amazing way to do that would be looking and saying, how can I add additional lines of revenue to what it is that I'm already running? And how could I do that in a really streamlined way? So that's sort of on the professional side. On the personal side, I made the decision early on that I wanted to be really hands-on with my kids. I just sort of, I don't know, like at some point I realized that my kids aren't going to be little forever and that they won't want to hang out with me forever. So my kids are still pretty little. They're 7 and 1.5. And really the 1.5-year-old, I mean, there's a big age gap. So read between the lines. Like I really wanted her for a long time before she was born. And having the opportunity to be with her as much as possible is super deeply meaningful to me. So I've structured my business in a way where I really only work out of the office Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And the other times I'm kind of trying to hang out with them, having a great relationship, playing games, going to the park, just kind of being mom. So one of the ways that I'm allowed to sort of do everything and keep all the plates spinning, if it were, is I have an awesome director of operations at work and an awesome director of operations at home. So if you want to run fast, you sort of need somebody who's helping you make sure everything is done at home. So I have an awesome, awesome person who's at my house right now, and she's prepping dinner and she's doing laundry and she's doing all the picking up. And I think for people who are feeling maybe hesitant about getting help at home, my response would be, if you went into your business and you had a pretty high level business and you didn't have a transaction coordinator, you would recognize that that was crazy. You would recognize you weren't focused on the really high impact tasks. And I guess I would say back, like, why is it that we're so quick to really see the value of what we're doing professionally, but maybe not the value of what we're doing personally? Like me, time with my kids matters. They don't totally care who washed their jeans, but they do really care if their mom was at the park with them, like teaching them how to ride a bike, right? So I just try to focus on my personal life because I am so busy on having a real relationship with them. Like I really care that my daughter gets read stories by me, but I don't really care who actually like cooked the dinner. So
yeah, I love that. I love that so much because I think that's a huge thing. Like, I love how you even put that analogy of like, we hire a transaction coordinator, we have somebody clean our office, we have all those, but you're not willing to do it in your home, you know? And so it's like, leverage it out. So when you're home, you're actually home. And that is like the one thing. So on our mastermind years ago, I took that, I'm like, I need a director of operations from my house. And we created an ad and all that. And it's been something I've executed and implemented as well, because it's a game changer, right?
It truly changes your life. You know, like it's interesting because all the people at work, you love them, you pour your life into them, but probably the amount of time that you're going to spend with them is finite. You know, you're maybe on a 3-year journey or 5-year journey, or you have an excellent relationship with someone, you're on a 10-year journey. Like with your husband and your kids, you're in a 50-year, hopefully, journey. So you want to make sure you're pouring them in an excellent way, you know?
Yeah. They're usually the ones that get the least of you, though. Like, truthfully, they're usually the ones that get the leftovers at the end of the day that you're like, oh, I'm exhausted, you know? And I find myself still doing that sometimes. So this is a good reminder. Okay. So let's pivot for a second. So you have this rad life, you're crushing it. Your family is awesome. You've got a great retail business. I know you're scaling. And now you're like, okay, I'm going to make, there's a whole nother wholesale / investment side. And this is the thing that I think I had a limiting belief around as well. And I sometimes think I still do. Like, I don't play out at a high level as some of you guys. And that's my 2022 thing is like, I'm going for this investment because why not? You know?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but the thing is, so you decided you're like, hey, I'm going to go do some wholesales. I'm going to also do some investments. So let's talk about if somebody today was like, I want to learn how to do this. And let me pivot for 1 second too. I think there's a thought process in the real estate community that wholesaling is wrong or all
Yeah.
of that. And I hear it. And it's like, okay, if you look at it that like you're literally offering somebody cash today to get them out of their home and they are willing and taking the offer, you don't know what their situation is, if they're in foreclosure or forbearance or whatever. You're offering them a
100%.
service. Like, and I know like when I do it, I'm like, I'm a good human. Like, I am going to make sure they're well taken care of. So
Yep.
the realtors that think this is a negative, get it out of your freaking head because this happens in every industry, in every capacity of like, I just got a new car. Part of it was, hey, should I trade in my car? Yes, if I trade in my car, it's a little bit more simple. I'm going to make a little bit less. Somebody's going to make
Yeah.
that. Somebody's going to make it. It's the same dang thing,
Yeah.
right? So you decide, hey, I'm going to go into this wholesale space or investment space. So let's talk about how you kind of got started, which you said that you did your one, you made your $5,000. How do you
Mhm.
now kind of scale that and what's your niche? Because I think this is super powerful.
So I love these questions. I think these are really good questions because when I first started wholesaling, I thought for sure the same thing. I thought, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that probably means you tricked them. They probably don't know the value of your. I'm like, all right, here's the thing, guys. Like in the days of Zillow and the Zestimate, and I don't know about where you are, but the MLS actually goes directly to Zillow and Realtor.com where I am. So everybody has absolutely perfect information on what has sold and what their house is worth. There is, I would venture to guess, it's actually impossible to trick people now.
Yeah.
But you know, what's funny is like my perspective on this actually really changed a couple of years ago when I was in somebody's living room and walking through their house. She was behind on mortgage payments, and I walked through and said, hey, we could probably get you a cash offer. And she was like, that's great, but what I just really want to stay in the house. My dad has cancer, and I really want to stay in the house. And I was like, okay, cool. Here's what I think you could get if you list it. Here's what I think I could offer you on a cash offer. And alternatively, if what you want to do is stay in the house, I can let you stay in the house for a year, completely rent-free, if you let me buy it for something like amount owed.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, cool. Well, the cash offer you gave me is a lot. She's like, but what I really want is peace in my heart. And I was like, well, peace in your heart is worth something. And full disclosure, like I think she owed 70 and I offered 120. So there was a $50,000 differential that she was putting like a premium on peace in her heart.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, like what she decided was, I want to stay in the house for a year rent free because that's more meaningful to me than the money.
Mm-hmm.
And when she went to close, she actually told our escrow agent several times, she's like, this means so much to me. Please tell Isabel, thank you. Like, this is an answer to prayers. We wanted to stay here. We're so grateful we're able to stay here. This is the piece that we were looking for. And to this day, like she's been there actually 3 years. She now pays rent. She still lives in the house. Praise the Lord. Her father is actually still alive. They live there together. And it's been a really happy story. But, ultimately I bought a house for $70,000 that today is worth $250,000. It's worth $250,000. And she was not tricked. All the numbers were on the table. What she valued was peace in her heart. And I think always people assume that if you got a good deal, it wasn't win-win. And I think that's not true. Just different people prioritize things in different ways. So that answers your first question. I think once you really get into it, you realize like what a service you're doing in really helping people solve a problem that maybe they couldn't have solved another way,
Yeah.
The second question on scale is, To me, how you would scale a wholesale company depends entirely on what you think you're good at. So I'll tell you the way that I did it, and then I'll tell you a couple of other ways I think work, all of which we do, right?
Mhm.
So I started my career cold calling. I love cold calling to this day. I think
You're a rare breed, my friend.
I think it's the most efficient way to go from zero to life goals. Like you wake up, you can change everything in your life by cold calling. So when I decided I was going to have a wholesale company, I just switched my script from, hey, want to sell your house to me, to, hey, want to sell for cash. If you call that way, it's actually slightly on the more legal side than just, we've heard about all these TCPA complaints over the past couple of years. Yep. You actually are allowed to call people and say, hey, want to sell your house to me? I'd be interested in buying it. So, so I switched my script and said, hey, you want to sell your house to me? And got a ton of leads that way. I love that. It works really, really well. Other things that I think work really well that you could scale that are not dependent on you. So let's say that you have a pretty good retail company and you feel like you're completely at capacity. One thing that we do in my wholesale company that I love and has worked incredibly well is we do a direct mail campaign. So I know what everyone's thinking. They're like, hey, Isabel, the 90s called and they want their strategy back. but
it works.
I tell you, there are people who just don't answer their phone anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Or no one has their phone number or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we email them an actual offer on their house. Hey, Spring, I'm interested in buying your house at 123 Main Street. And to prove how interested I am, here is an actual cash offer. We close in 30 days. Let me know if you're interested. And what I love about that, what I thought was cool, is it's just binary. They're either going to call and be like, this is the worst offer I've ever seen. I'm not doing it. Or they're going to say yes, and you're going to have a contract, right? So we find we get for me, what I think is a really good acceptance rate on those contracts. For every $1,500 we spend, we make $5,000. So 3x return. I love that. I also think texting works really well. So we're crushing it right now on mass texting. You could probably get a couple of VAs in the Philippines to text through neighborhoods and just say, hey, want to sell your house for cash, and then work the leads. I think that's another nice, inexpensive way of scaling out a wholesale company that does not necessarily depend totally on you. But that's what we do. So our acquisition guys call. We do a really targeted direct mail piece with an offer attached to it. And then we do mass texting. And those three things, I love them because they're scalable, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So your first deal that you took down, or even like that cute little old lady that stayed, I don't even know if she's old, but
she's
where are you getting the money? Because I think that's a big thing for people that are like, well, great, but how do I buy a house? So what would you suggest to people?
So this is a truly amazing question. So I think you can do it a couple of ways. So number one is if you buy something at enough of a discount and it is a site-built property, like let's say you buy something at 80% of market value, you already have enough equity that you can go in and refinance the house and do a cash out refi and have no money into that deal. So for instance, the deal with the gal who stayed, we got a hard money loan. So a hard money loan is when I go to a private individual and say, hey, I have a really good deal. Would you be willing to loan me money for this? We'll need it for 6 months, because 6 months is exactly the day where I can go to a lender and do a total cash out refi.
Right.
So hard money lender looks at the deal and was like, holy smokes, this is a great deal. I will happily lend on it. So I got a hard money loan, and then right at 6 months, I did a cash out refi, and it just went into a normal conventional loan. So in that way, you can literally get properties for free. And sometimes, if you have enough equity in them, they'll actually pay you to do the deal. And you know what's amazing about that is you don't pay taxes on it, because you don't pay taxes on a cash out refi. So you would not pay taxes until you sold the property if you ever did. So potentially you could do this absolutely every year and build your portfolio that way and have a really good portfolio, all of which you didn't pay money out of pocket for.
Okay, so I love that you said that, because one of the speakers in Mexico did this whole thing. It's called the Burr Method.
Okay.
He bought him at 70%, so the 30% went in, whatever. 150 properties over the last 18 months. His portfolio is over $18 million. So he's going to be sharing exactly what you're saying, how he scaled it. And guess what he does? Direct mail. So he's gonna be sharing like exactly how they do it, how they pick their markets. But I just wanted, like, when you said that, I'm like, everybody thinks it's so difficult, and really it's more of a mindset component of making that decision, like, hey, I'm going to be a real estate investor, right? Or I'm going to create wealth in real estate, and then being consistent, going back to like the old school methods, because that's how you got to reach out to people, right? So there's only 3 ways: either calling, door knocking, or direct mail, calling or text. And so I freaking love that. You know what I love about this too is, like, I'm a lover of all people. Like, there's power in everything, but there's just something cool about you being like, I'm unapologetically a mom, I'm unapologetically a wife, I'm unapologetically going to create massive wealth, I'm unapologetically going to have a big business. And you just have such great energy that I'm hoping, like, having this even out there, plus you coming to speak, people can be like, yeah, I can do that. Even if it's one house a year, like one house a year of somebody doing a takedown of building out a rental portfolio, like you said, like, that's a game changer, Can
you imagine, Spring? Like, truly, it actually is that simple. If everybody just bought one house a year over the course of a 20-year or a 30-year career, and each of those houses paid $1,000, I mean, super cheap rent, you're going to have $20,000 or $30,000 passive at the end of your career. Like, I don't know about you, but I just get sick of seeing agents end their careers broke.
And that's most of them, because there's a lot of them, there's not a growth plan. You and I were talking before we went live. The problem is like, okay, you start selling real estate, and then the next natural progression is a team. But a lot of the team models are all ego based, and at the end of the day, if you really look at your P&L, there's not money unless it's structured correctly. I didn't tell you this, but a local team in my market put on Snap or Instagram the other day, and they're like, if you're paying more than a 25% split, you're getting ripped off. And I thought, if you're taking less than 25%, you are not making any money. Like, you're 100% ego. Like, but I just giggled and said, I'm like, he's obviously not being coached to really know his P&L, so.
Well, and I think that's the key is, I know so many agents, ones that I adore, that are literally working to support their team. And I'm just like, you can't go on that journey. It doesn't make sense.
That's the thing. Like, why do that? And so this is powerful of, like, you can have a big life. You don't have to have some huge mega conglomerate. You can do real estate investment. Brett, our coach, actually had us do a wealth plan, a 30-year wealth plan. And I love that he said this. He was like, the reason people are not wealthy is because they don't plan. And so he had us all create a 30-year plan. And like, we had to have a $50 to $100 million wealth plan before we got in that room. And I know when I say that, people are like, $100 million, but it's really not that hard if you plan it like that. And so I had my team, my leadership team do it, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is only this many properties per year of purchasing, and a little bit in the stock market. And I'm like, it really is, to what you just said, Isabel. One a year over 30 years is 30 homes. It's pretty good wealth, and so it's just being purposeful and, like, doing it is the big key
I totally agree. I think if you have a plan over the course of your career and you realize that time is on your side, and intentionally you build things a brick at a time, what you find is you have this amazing foundation for just such a more powerful life than you ever anticipated. It's really a game changer. And to your point, it's really just knowing what you want to do. Like, I think realizing you can have any life is the most powerful thing you can ever realize,
Well, money is good for the good it can do. And so I'm all about it. Okay. So Isabel, you guys, is one of our presenters. I asked her if she'd come to Mexico. She graciously said yes. She's going to be teaching all about wealth creation. So she does a lot in the double wide is what I call it, but that's not what it is. What is it? Manufactured homes?
Manufactured housing. So
Yeah.
I invest a lot in inexpensive housing. I think the world needs it. I'm incredibly excited to join you in Mexico. I told you before the call, I think people are going to look back on the period from 2020 to 2025, like start of coronavirus to 5 years after, as a time where wealth shifted so dramatically in America that, and I truly love you for having this conversation and for what you're giving to other people, because if we know that wealth is shifting and we know that everybody has to just sort of act now, then I love that you're saying to the people in your life, hey, let's all get together. Let's talk about how we can make sure that you end up on the right side of that,
And well, that was my intention. So my intention around this, the outcome is I want everybody to leave being like, man, I'm so grateful that I came. And I also, when I booked the venue, I was like, I want to go somewhere that you can connect afterwards, because I know the secret sauce comes after you get out of that room. And then you're asking you directly, like, Isabel, what software are you using for this, or what company for direct mail, or all the things that, like, I know my growth has happened. So I'm like, let's do it at somewhere that, like, you can have fun, you can connect, you can collab, like, get out of your environment for a few days. So I thank you so much for coming. If you guys, she's going to be teaching on how you can work 3 days a week and increase your net worth, like how you can wholesale. Like, we're going to have a ton of topics, a ton of breakouts. We're going to be there for 4 days, along with 12 other people that are like crushing it. Dan Noma, he's going to be zooming in. He does all the hedge funds. I think you know him out of Phoenix. He works with the hedge funds. He does the iBuyer component. We've got Frank, who, like I said, bought in the last year and a half, like 150 houses on the Burr Method. He's somebody you're going to want to connect with. We've got all kinds, plus just scaling your real estate business. So if you're interested, I'll put the link below. Isabel, do we get to meet your husband?
I'm so excited. I'm lobbying him to come, so we'll see.
Most of the spouses are coming. Just let them know that. Like, I think a lot of people are bringing, like, because it's only 3 hours of content, and then it's adventures and whatnot. So we'd love to meet him. But okay, any last words you got for us, my friends?
No, just that if people have the opportunity, I truly think this is going to be a game changer.
So too.
Every person that you've outlined that I know has been truly like an epic influence in what I've done over the last year that's been successful. I mean, I love Frank. I love Daniel Dixon. I love you. I mean, there's so many people that are just true heavy hitters that are going to be sharing what they're doing that's really special and exceptional. I mean, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I made sure to make it brand agnostic, that it was just, let's pick the best of the best and let's grow. So, all right, guys, links below. Isabel, thank you so much for spending some of your time with us today. I always enjoy it. So,
always a pleasure to see you.
Bye, you guys.